One minute warning, councillors, 1 minute warning. So
Welcome. Hi, Councillor Kennedy.
good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5 o'clock on April 10th, 2024 in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. We have roll call this evening. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Pranger.
Present.
Councillor Steinoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
And I'd like to acknowledge our staff members that are here and a surprisingly full gallery this evening. Must be exciting news going on tonight. Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
Thank you. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibway Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation, and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous people have made both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibway Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda? So I'd like to remind all council members to disclose pecuniary interest, either now or as it arises in the meeting and the general nature thereof. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I need to declare a indirect pecuniary interest in matter 6.1A, the Physician Recruitment and Retention Healthcare Priority Program outline, due to my husband's employment with Bruce Power. Thank you.
All right, we need a mover and seconder as we move along. That the minutes of the council meeting held March 25, 2024, March 27, 2024 be adopted as printed. Moved by councillors Hinchberger and Stewart. All in favor? Those are carried. Matters for public participation. We have a couple of delegations this evening. And I'd like to welcome James Sconiak, Chief Development Officer and Executive Vice President, who's here this evening to provide an update on Bruce Power and the proposed Bruce C project. James, welcome this evening. Nicole will be there to make all things right.
There we go. Yeah, I can do it myself. No problem. I don't follow the slides anyway. So there you go. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Awesome. Thanks very much. So firstly, thanks very much for having me. I assume this barrier is in place so people don't help themselves to the pizza, but I'd rather have a Lions Club hamburger outside when the weather's nice. So that's my preference. Look, thanks very much for having me tonight. I will take the slides as read. I wanted to provide them as background information because I know all the council materials are posted for the public. So there's a lot of information in there. I'm not going to do a detailed page turn, but there's really 3 or 4 key items that I wanted to leave with you by way of a Bruce Power update today. And I'd be delighted to take any questions that you have. Just before I get into the Bruce Power update, I do want to start with a big thank you to King Cardin Council, the staff here at the municipality for your ongoing partnership with Bruce Power. We can't do what we do as an organization without strong engagement in the community. And what I always like to say is, your challenges are our challenges. I know there's some items on the agenda later tonight regarding an issue of importance to all of us in the case of physician recruitment. There's items we're working together on with housing and utilities. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so, you know, we're proud to be a part of this community. And we thank you for hosting the Bruce facility in your municipality. And it's something that we don't take for granted. So any feedback you ever have for Bruce Power, it's in the spirit of cooperation, and we want to always be focused on what we can do better. In terms of the Bruce Power update tonight, I really want to start with a focus on our current activities on site, just to kind of paint a bit of a picture for everybody around the council table and for those watching in terms of where we are in our site development. There's obviously a lot of excitement on Bruce C, and I'll get to that at the very end. But one of the things that we often undervalue in our energy planning as a province and frankly as a country is the value of existing assets. All of you who do work in a municipality know better than anybody that a lot of the assets that we rely on in our world, whether it's roads, schools, bridges, hospitals, power plants, transmission lines, distribution systems, you name it. A lot of that infrastructure that we continue to benefit from now was really put into place in the 1970s and 80s. And so while it is important that we look at what the growth and demand for things like electricity is, it's important to keep in mind that the ability for us to build out to the same scale and capability that exists today in the system is very, very difficult. And so the key message that I'd like to leave council, and we leave this with the province of Ontario, is securing our existing assets is the lowest cost, fastest way that we can secure energy supply in Ontario. Existing site, existing asset, existing technology that's well understood and well developed. So if you think about the Bruce site in terms of that long-term site development, we announced our deal on January 1st of 2016 to life extend all 8 of our reactors to the middle of the century. And as we stand here today in April of 2024, that remains Canada's largest private sector infrastructure project. It is on time and on budget, but over the course of the next 5 years, we are going to be seeing the peak of that activity. So as much as there's a lot of excitement about new build and what the future holds, of our 8 reactors at Bruce Power, only 3 of them are fully refurbished. So we have 5 left to go. We have Unit 3 underway now. We'll commence Unit 4 on February 1st of next year. We'll commence Unit 5 on October 1st of 2026, and so on with Unit 7 and 8. So there is no future for the Bruce site. Frankly, I don't think there's a future for the nuclear industry in Ontario unless we can continue along that path of refurbishing and life extending our assets. It will be the foundation of Ontario's electricity system like it was for the last 30 to 40 years, the next 30 to 40 years. And so that's something we can't be complacent ever about until that is done with safety, quality, schedule adherence, and on budget. We're not done. The second key thing that I want to leave you with is what I call energy conservation on steroids. And what I mean by that is if you look at the assets that we have at the Bruce site, in addition to life extending them, we're also investing incrementally in each of the units to increase the total output of the site. So when we signed our long-term power purchase arrangement with the province of Ontario in 2016, as I noted earlier, it was for a 6,300 megawatt peak output for the site. We have a project called Project 2030, and the goal of Project 2030, between increases in power on the reactor side, once we fully retube the units and the complete refurbishment, and improvements we've made to the secondary side of the plant, our goal is to have a 7,000 megawatt peak site for the 2030s. Why is that important? Well, because the difference between 6,300 megawatts and 7,000, you can do the math, is 700 megawatts. That is the equivalent of 700,000 Ontario homes providing electricity. So when people say to Bruce Power, when are you going to build your first small modular reactor? I say, we are building 2 of them right now. So again, it's that focus on existing assets, but using innovation and leveraging the fact that we've invested in the assets to perform more from those assets. And that's very aligned with what Ontario needs, because obviously we see a shortage of electricity coming in the decade ahead as units undergo refurbishment. And as I would expect, Pickering will be refurbished in the early 2030s. The third area I want to leave you with is really goes along the lines of this as a strategic asset. And you would have heard us, very proud of this, continue to expand it, is our role in the production of life-saving medical isotopes. So for over half a century, Canada has been a world leader in the production of isotopes. We have unique infrastructure here in Canada that nobody else has, between our CANDU reactors, reactor-based technology, and cyclotrons, and the entire isotope supply chain. And unfortunately, about 15, 20 years ago, Canada really ceded our leadership role when it came to isotope production. Now we are seeing around the world, in particular after the pandemic, a new renewed interest in life sciences and the important role that life sciences play in modern societies, but also, given the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, a commitment on the part of the world to say we are not going to be reliant on Russia for medical isotopes. So there's a real supply security there. So what Bruce Power and our dedicated team and operations have done at Bruce B, with our partners at Isogen, which is a Framatome Kinectrics partnership, and partners in Germany, is we have put the first ever short-lived medical isotope production system on a power reactor. Why is that a game changer? Well, because for that half a century we were leaders in Canada, we relied on research reactors to produce those isotopes. And they did a great job of that. The problem with research reactors is that they're research reactors. And a lot of people criticized Chalk River when they had supply interruptions, but it's a research reactor. It's supposed to be turned off. It's supposed to be turned on. It's not like the electricity supply we have here, where if we have one reactor down on maintenance, which we do right now in the case of Unit 3 MCR, we have 7 other units to provide the supply. So by putting isotope production on power reactors, not only do we have the production there, but we can have the redundancy that our reactors offer from an electricity perspective. Unfortunately, 40 to 50% of people in this room will be diagnosed with cancer in your life. 40 to 50%, half the room. 100% of us will be impacted by cancer at some point in our life. And so I need you to think about medical isotopes as the form of energy that is used to sterilize medical equipment every time we go in the doctor's office or the hospital, to diagnose cancer and to treat cancer. Or in the case of the isotope we're producing, it's a theranostic. It's both as a diagnostic isotope and a therapeutic, or as I like to call it, a heat-seeking missile. So there's a moral imperative on our behalf as Canadians to make sure we're playing that role. So really exciting time at Bruce Power, life extending our asset, innovating in the assets to increase the output, applying the production of life-saving medical isotopes. And I'm hopeful that over the course of the next generation here, as Canada continues to dominate in the supply of medical isotopes, that we can get more of that value chain, firstly in Canada, then in Ontario, then in rural Ontario, and then ideally here in southwestern Ontario, because isotopes are like an ice cube taking them out of the fridge. You only have a certain amount of time to get them in a patient's glass. And so the closer that processing is, the better. The final thing I want to cover tonight is Bruce C. A lot of excitement about Bruce C. I'm very excited about Bruce C. I know the mayor attended the announcement last July on site. And I'm pleased that Bruce Power has been able to enter into an agreement with the IESO to essentially enable an economic model where we can go and advance the pre-development work of Bruce C. With everything we have underway on our site right now, it's very important that we deliver that first. So What I often say when people ask me about the prospects of Bruce C, what I say is we're taking an important first step. And in municipal terms, the way I like to look at it is, I think municipalities that are good at planning, and I think, you know, Kincardine is one of those. They're municipalities that are looking at where in the municipality is something zoned residential, commercial, industrial, engaging in that process. What needs to be developed to enable, whether it's housing, commercial buildings, industrial. It doesn't mean that if you zone something residential, you know the size of the house, who's going to build it, or how much it's going to cost, but you've done that zoning. In the case of nuclear power, advancing the pre-development work, which we call a federal impact assessment, is our equivalent of zoning. We have to go through a multi-year federal process to have our site zoned for a new nuclear plant. In the 12 years to build a plant, that process is about 4 years of that. So while we're spending a lot of investment and need to get that life extension right, this is a logical focus step we can take in moving forward on having the new build option. And if you think about where we are now in 2024, 4 years from now is 2028, we'll have about 85% of the life extension program behind us and be able at that point to look at what other opportunities are there, because there's very clearly a need for new nuclear in Ontario. I get a lot of questions about technology. The approach we are taking to this impact assessment is technology neutral. We want people who want to provide us a technology to have a thorough process to understand the pros and the cons, to understand what they need to do to get that technology ready. Because if we've learned anything in our execution of our refurbishment projects and doing projects on time and on budget, is that you lock the design of something before you build it. You lock the design, you procure the parts and the materials, and then you can properly build a commercial case as to how much something is going to cost and what does it look like to operate. So that's that step-by-step approach that we're taking. And I really do commend the province of Ontario, who have created the mechanisms for this pre-development work. Years ago, if you wanted to proceed as a private company with this kind of pre-development work, you would usually have had to make a decision to start a project. And that's not effective long-term planning. If you look at what Ontario Hydro did when these plants were first constructed and conceived, Ontario Hydro did this kind of long-term planning all the time. And that was why they were an effective organization that they could flex based on the supply needs of Ontario. So those are the 4 things I wanted to cover tonight. As I said, I wanted to leave some slides for you to be able to read in advance and also for members of the public. And if there's any time left and you have some questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Questions from council members? Anybody else? Oh, Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you. Yes, there's always questions. Thank you very much. I'm very impressed. You don't even need your slides. You're very passionate towards it. I'm passionate too. You have a great story.
It is.
And Mr. Mike Ranchak at the CNA, I never saw a smile so big in my life. But getting $50 million from 2 different governments is a pretty good idea. We're looking forward to it. There's going to be challenges for both of us. As you're well aware, we're the last mile and the first mile in and out of that plant. And we're going to have our own challenges with infrastructure and everything, but looking forward to the future. You have a lot of challenges too, so we'll work together and we'll have some success. Thank you.
No, and just on that, I think it's a really good point, because the purpose of the impact assessment is to identify impacts. So there's going to be an opportunity at the end of the impact assessment process, and we're putting together what the investment case is to look at all of those items. You know, impacts on housing, municipal services, infrastructure. And so what I like about what we're doing is it's not a take it or leave it type situation right now. It's an opportunity where we can look at those items in advance and have the time to prepare. One of the things you have Bruce Power's commitment on is we're not going to surprise you one day and announce we're building a plant and the shovel's going in the ground tomorrow. There'll be a lot of opportunity, because the work this is not a technical business. This is a people business. People need somewhere to live. They need somewhere for their kids to go to school, for their, go to the hospital when they're not well. And we need to work together on that.
James, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. It was a delight to be acknowledged as one of the municipal members of the Southern Ontario Isotope Coalition.
Thank you.
You've got a great leadership team there, and we look forward to the many different avenues of influence that Bruce Power and our municipality will work together on. So thanks once again.
Great. Thanks for having me. Turn it on.
Next on our presentation list is Dennis Flavel and Ian Allingham. Is Ian here tonight? Not well, okay. So Dennis and other perhaps as needed. And they'll be making a presentation regarding the Kincardine Lion Club's 50th anniversary, which is an exciting event. Dennis, please.
Mayor Craig, councillors, good evening. I'm Lion Dennis Flavel, and on behalf of the Kincardine Lions Club, I thank you for the opportunity to address council tonight. This week is a milestone in the history of our club. We celebrate our 50th anniversary. I am the chair of the 50th anniversary committee, and as you can see, we have a contingent of Lions with us tonight. I would like to make mention that after 50 years, we still have one charter Lion Larry Bannerman, who's put 50 years in, and he's as active today as he was on day one. And also, previously, two mayors of Kincardine were Lions, John Askin and Charles Mann. So I think that's a good connection between the Lions and council. The Kincardine Lions Club was chartered on April the 12th, 1974. And it was sponsored by the Tiverton and District Lions Club, well before your time, Bill. Our club is extremely proud of all the projects we've completed and the support that we have provided to our community in the past 50 years. Some of our major projects include the bandshell at Victoria Park, which we put in many hours of hard labor building, the stairs at the lighthouse, which one of our members designed and we built. We paid for and installed the crossing guard shelters that you see at some of the schools, and they have been refurbished several times over the years. The North Boardwalk between the piers and the pavilion is a project that the Lions Club undertook. We raised the money for it and we built it. And of course, our pride and joy is the Lions Park at the Davidson Centre. The playground, which has been refurbished twice, the picnic shelters and tables that are in there. We installed some new trees, the splash pad, and soon to be the all-wheel park. The Kincardine Lions Club has made major donations over the past 50 years to municipal projects such as projects at the hospital, at the medical clinic, the library expansion, lots of projects at the Davidson Centre. We helped at the Huron Shores Hospice and the Women's House, to name just a few. We also support our local schools and sports groups and other organisations in town, such as the Food Bank. We do this in numerous ways. At the Food Bank, we provide grub tubs for the local schools for children who come to school hungry. We've provided sports uniforms for different teams in town. We do barbecues for several different organisations in town. And we are very proud of the annual donation we make to the inclusion programme at the summer playground. We've accomplished a lot in the last 50 years, and we look forward to achieving even more in the future. In celebration of our anniversary, this Friday, the 12th at noon, we will raise the Lions flag and the Canada flag at the Lions Park. And also on June the 15th, we'll be having a celebration dinner at the Ainsdale Golf Course. We would like to thank the municipality for all the support it has provided in the past, and we look forward to maintaining and expanding on this great partnership in the future. Thank you.
Questions, comments from council? Dennis, I'll say it. Thank you very much for being the spokesperson for an organization that has gifted the municipality with all sorts of visible benefits and invisible benefits as well. We are delighted to be the home for a group of people that see how working together really benefits our community, and we're proud to be part of that partnership. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We look forward to the flag raising on the 12th, and even more so for the presentation, the celebration on the 15th. So thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to our staff reports. We have the Physician Recruitment and Retention Healthcare Priority Program outline. We need a mover and seconder. The council direct the mayor and CAO to work with Saugeen Shores to advance a request to Bruce Power to fund the Healthcare Partnership Program as outlined. Moved by, is Councillor Kennedy online still?
Yes, I am. I will move that. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kennedy, and second by Councillor Kavanaugh. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. You can tell who the really dedicated gallery members are now after the presentation. So it's Liz, yeah. All right. We have a motion here to award the Highland Drive relining water main. Need a mover and seconder. The council award the contract for relining the water main on Highland Drive in Kincardine to FirPal Construction Limited for the bid price of $488,880, excluding HST. Moved by councillors Steinhoff, Gray, and Blackwell. Questions, comments? Councillor Stewart, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, I guess Corey's here to answer all the questions. Good, thank you. Oh, Adam's there too. I'm sorry, Adam, I didn't see you. You slipped in there at the last minute. Really just a question. I see that we sent it out to 5. We ended up with 1 and it's still below budget, which is good. I remember seeing the pictures, and I do have the pictures in the budget, and that pipe looked awful corroded. I know that you're trying the newer technology. How are you going to clean the pipe and then line it without actually putting all that stuff into people's homes? Can you sort of give me a quick explanation about that? Because that pipe almost looks 50% shrunk. So is it worth doing this, or is it better off just to build a new one?
So through you, Mayor Craig. No, it's great. Certainly from our opinion, this is money well invested in this approach. To do a full reconstruction of that road, we would have been looking at a budget somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million. So in terms of the technology and the approach, essentially they come in and drill out the inside of the main to get rid of all of the buildup that's in there. They will reinstate fully the diameter of the pipe by doing that. And then they'll pull a resin sleeve back through that, and then that will adhere to the interior of the main. From an integrity perspective, it actually will fully reinstate what was there from an integrity perspective. Service life and all of that is very similar to what a new PVC pipe would provide us, based on industry testing and practices. The method of construction as well is certainly not as intrusive as full reconstruction. Essentially, for the length of the duration of the pipe that's going to be relined, we're going to dig pits at both ends and potentially kind of in the middle. And that's where they're going to go in and do their work from, and essentially kind of drill through and then pull that sleeve back and all of that. With the service connections for all of the properties, they will walk a little camera robot unit through and GPS all of the locations of where those services are coming in. And so after that pipe lining has gone through, they take a machine, this robot machine basically, go to those GPS coordinates and drill a hole back through, which reinstates the service. So it's actually really cool technology. But from our end, we certainly haven't done this here in Kincardine. It's been done, throughout the province and other areas. I would say the number of bids we got is because we really defined what like the service and scope was, which eliminated, maybe your mom and pop shops and really got us, into some credible individuals or firms that have done a significant amount of this work, so.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you for explaining that, because I was a little bit, because I know it's the first one. This is a great technology. You know, and it sounds like it's going to work great, and it sounds like you covered all your bases. So I expect a documentary on this probably in a couple of months and everything, but good luck. And I hope it's very successful with no hiccups. Thank you.
Just as a comment, that idea of a documentary, there have been a number of projects that have happened in Kincardine, and perhaps staff can bring a list. Like I don't want to start them now because I'll forget something. There's been a number of things, very cutting edge for rural Ontario, whether it's our staff members know who they are, and you likely know what they are too, but it would be interesting to hear from staff. Just a quick little report. We've had so many comments about this. This is new technology we're using. So the documentary thing, even though it was just an off the cuff remark, Kincardine is doing, the municipality is doing remarkable things in our infrastructure and development and economic development stuff. It's fabulous. So, okay, so that was, I'm sorry, that was moved by whom? Amanda and Beth, any more discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Award Kincardine Tiverton Tower Maintenance Environmental Services. We need a mover and seconder that council award the contract for maintenance and safety improvements of the Kincardine and Tiverton water towers, including all provisional items to Misco Mulders Inspection and Services for the bid price of $171,771.60, excluding HST, moved by councillors Steinoff, Gray, and Hinchberger. Conversation? Councillor Stewart?
Apologize. Through you, Mayor. This is an interesting one. I like the results. Just trying to understand that there's a huge discrepancy between the winning bid and this bid from BGL contractors at twice as much. Did they not read the tender very well? Like, you know, when you start seeing that, do you have any explanation for them, or were they just, can you explain it or not? It doesn't really matter.
So through you, Mayor Craig, you know, specifically to the results here and the bidders, you know, I can't fully correlate that, but what I can say in terms of experience in tendering over a number of years, you know, some of the considerations that I've seen, you know, yeah, there are situations where estimators maybe don't fully understand the scope of the project. It's possible BGL has a full list of contracts secured for the year and really just tossed a number at this. And if they got it, they got it. So they throw some fluff in. So, and I'm sure there's other reasons as well, but those are just, you know, a couple of points.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, did you have a question, Councillor? All in favor? And that's carried. Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. We need a mover and seconder that council direct staff to make application for the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund for upgrades required to the Tiverton water supply to enable proposed growth and to address existing assets. Moved by councillors Blackwell and Hinchberger. Conversation. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, the application for the project will, in my experience with granting, is generally they won't fund anything that's already happened. So we're funding the EA that's currently happening right now, and then the application would be for whatever work we decide to do going forward. Is that correct?
So through you, Mayor Craig, I can't recall specifically the criteria under this application. It is due next Friday. We have been working, you know, in parallel to prepare kind of the generic terms of things. It does specify within the guidelines what is eligible and what isn't eligible. I think there is a threshold. So I believe, if I've got it correct on this grant initiative, there was an initiation date that you could actually have some work that's underway and still be would still qualify. That being said, I mean, we have the approved component in the budget for the EA, and then this year would be, you know, any of the capital works beyond that. So.
Counselor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. James Cognac, when he was here at Bruce Power, talked about the value of advanced planning, including in some cases where the municipality has done so as well. I was looking at the requirements to be eligible for funding, and the one being start no later than September 30th, 2024. So this almost seems like incredibly fortuitous that the provincial government would come forward with some money on something that's so important. And at the same time, having started something earlier, staff would be in the position right now to have something completed to the point where we'd be eligible. So I think there's a lot of credit that goes out here.
Counselor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, I might be entering into a very controversial area. Look at our director's already laughing or smiling. We really need to bring this to council. We need to bring it to the residents of Tiverton. We really need to think through this, whether we are going to supply them. I'm looking at my fellow councilor, whether we're going to supply them from our, water treatment plant, or we're going to increase the wells. We know that we're going to be underwater, basically, if the new development ever took place and everything. And we're going to have to answer this question, and it's going to be a very emotional question, but there seems to be some funding. And the question here actually to Adam or to Mark, if we decided, hypothetically, please, if we decide to hook up to Kincardine Water Supply, could we put this project under this grant program and have the 65% of it or whatever costs through the government, and then the people of Tiverton would only be responsible 35%? Would that be a possibility? Hypothetically.
So through you, Mayor Craig, that's fully the intent of the grant opportunity. The province would fund up to a maximum of 73%. We would be required to fund the remaining 27%. And through the EA, that will determine whether we are on a well system that's, going to be augmented from what's there, or a connection to the pipeline. The project to, undertake either of those initiatives is in the range of $6 million. And so that's what we're applying to the province for, to say, we want $6 million at 73% to complete this work.
Counselor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I wanted to comment based on what Councillor Stewart has said. Obviously, with the water plan that we were given, we were told we're already over capacity with what we have promised. So for me, emotions aside, this is something we have to discuss. I have no idea which way it's going to go, because we're still going through the proper analysis to decide what is feasible. So for me, having an opportunity to have the government assist us with this important infrastructure is not something we should be walking away from. So I see no problem supporting this.
All in favor? That's carried. 2024 hot mix paving tender concession 8. We need a mover and seconder. The council award project 9152 2024 hot mix paving contract to EC King Contracting for their tendered price of $924,928.60, including the non-refundable portion of HST. Moved by Councillors Hinchberger and Deputy Mayor Clark. Any discussion? All in favor, or was that a question, Councillor Blackwell?
Thank you, through you. It was, and then I always think that I don't need to ask it, but I will. The price for the that we're paving for the hot mix, and the total budget is 1,400,800. I can't say the words today. Oh my goodness. I'm just wondering if that expectation, that tendered price for the hot mix, is kind of what we expected as part of that overall budget, if that's in line with, because there's just not a breakdown in the report.
Yes, through you, Mayor. It is a little bit lower than what we expected or what we budgeted for, so we're right in line with the overall budget.
All in favor? That's carried. Award tandem plow truck. We need a mover and seconder. The council award the contract for the tandem plow truck to Viking Civis for the bid price of $444,579.26, including the non-refundable HST. And further, the council approves a budget amendment to increase the cost from $425,000 to $460,000, with the 35,000 overage to be funded through the Life Cycle Reserve Fund. Moved by Councillor Kavanaugh. Are you moving or, okay, moved by Councillor Kavanaugh? I couldn't imagine a pecuniary interest, but the other hand was up, yeah. Moved by Councillor Kavanaugh, seconded by Councillor Blackwell. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Bike lane use by mobility scooters. We need a mover and seconder. The council approve the uses within the municipal road allowances for the purpose of bike lanes per report operations 2024-07. And further, that mobility scooters are not permitted on the road within the bike lanes and shall continue to use sidewalks where available as per the Highway Traffic Act. Moved by Councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Stewart. Questions? Director, would you like to comment on this? We did receive some correspondence. Could you more for public information at this point, please?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Craig. So while reviewing this opportunity in terms of whether we could or should permit mobility scooters within our bike lanes through the both research and then discussions with our legal advisor, basically it comes down to in the Highway Traffic Act, there's definitions for uses, and pedestrians are listed within that. The use of a mobility scooter within the Highway Traffic Act is suggesting that they shall use sidewalks where available. The purpose of that is, generally speaking, a mobility scooter for accessibility purposes is generally traveling at a much slower rate of speed than a vehicular traffic within your highway corridor. Not to make things overcomplicated, but there are many other types and forms of scooters as well that are permitted within your traveled portion of your road. But specifically speaking to the mobility scooters, the Act is suggesting that they should use sidewalks where available. One thing to keep in mind too, I mean, we're still very much at the infancy stage in terms of what we offer and have available for bike lanes in the community. And generally speaking, many of our, I'll call them our arterial type streets, do have sidewalks available for pedestrian usage.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, that kind of covered a lot of what I was going to chime in with. Basically, that there's many types of micro mobility options out there, and sometimes what's referred to as scooters is kind of actually a really big broad range of items. From my research from across different parts of the province and looking at the Highway Traffic Act, I do agree with this, because in general, you try to separate users based on speed and elements of safety. And so a mobility scooter in and of itself is classified as a pedestrian, whereas bikes have to use the road whether or not there's a bike lane. And some of our bike lanes do end and could have conflicts between a vehicle and a potential other user. So I do support this, and I'm happy to chat if people in the community have questions about that.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I think for the purposes of the Accessibility Committee, really what some of the concerns that were brought forward were just about, I guess, the ease of using a sidewalk with a mobility scooter and running into pedestrians, and just really, it's not particularly convenient. I agree that the Act is limited really what the municipality can do. So irrespective of perhaps potential ways forward that we may have thought in terms of members of the community, it's pretty limited. So I support the recommendations of this report. It'll be interesting to watch because it's clearly a developing area, and other provinces are taking very different views on it. So I think as time goes on, there probably will be some path forward that is perhaps more agreeable.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. I do also want to mention that in our cycling master plan, there's significant recommendations around multi-use paths, and that is an opportunity in the future for possible alternative transportation methods to use a shared off-road path. And so I think that might be as we continue on to expand our non-vehicle transportation network, that there will be increased opportunities for safe passage for multiple different kinds of mobility devices.
All in favor of the recommendation? And that was carried. Municipal crosswalks and accessibility review. We need a mover and seconder that council approve the continued use of best practices for design of public space while utilizing a variety of accessible design considerations per report operations 2024-06. Moved by councillors Hinchberger and Stewart. Any discussion? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'm wondering, there's many different kinds of pedestrian crossovers. There's at least 4 different ones in the OTM Book 15. And one of the things I'm wondering about is whether or not there's appetite from council to explore possibly raising the standard that we have at least those crossings that already have pedestrian activated signals. I would like a report on this only because in thinking about it.
Excuse me,
Oh,
would
yeah.
you like to make an amendment?
Can I make an amendment? Okay, so I'll make an amendment that we continue with best practice currently, but that we request a follow-up report on, I'm not sure the wording I should use there, but on possible audible devices for type A and B crossings, the PXO crossings, please.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Deputy Mayor Clark, discussion about the amendment. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, the reason that I'd like a report on it is in reading through some information from the Canadian Institute for the Blind, there was significant information around if you have a pedestrian crossing where you're activating a light to signal it's now safe to cross. If you are blind or low vision, that does put you at potential risk if you aren't able to cross with an audible. One of my concerns, though, is around whether or not if it's not a traffic light, whether there's still obligations or potential for conflict if we were basically to have an audible going off, but there was any concern that a car wouldn't respond to those lights. So it's something that I'd like to see potentially to enhance what we're doing right now and try to increase safety. But I think that there needs to be a report potentially from our infrastructure and development team to consider best practice and whether it's actually safer or not safer.
Further discussion? So we're voting on the amendment, which is to include can you repeat? Roughly speaking, what the amendment says?
The amendment was enhancing category A and B crosswalks with audible.
To receive a
crossing.
report.
To receive a report on that?
To receive a report about enhancing the crosswalks beyond the standard as presented by our director at this point. Was there a time frame that you had in mind, Councillor?
Thank you. I don't have a specific time frame. I'd like it ideally that if we were to approve that standard, that we could potentially implement upgrading those in the 2025 budget.
Just the time frame is.
Okay, could there be by August or September? Yeah, September would be fine.
Councillor Prenger, you had a question? So you've heard the amendment. Does anyone need clarification on what the amendment does to the motion? Councillor Prenger?
Right. Can we just get some feedback from staff if September is achievable? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Craig. I think, the foundational information is here. I mean, we've identified what the costs are to consider additional upgrades. So we can further refine that in terms of the 6 PXO locations to break out what is there currently at each of those and identify what the true cost would be at each. From a safety perspective, best practices, all of that. I think generally speaking, our comments back are going to be that, there are approved types of PXOs and all comply in terms of, providing safe opportunities of passage. It just really depends on how elaborate you want to establish them and what the costs are, but the fall is achievable.
All in favor of the amendment? Okay, any opposed? All right, that carried. So now the amended motion reads that council approve the continued use of best practices for design of public space while utilizing a variety of accessible design considerations for operations 2024-06. Plus, we'll be receiving a report in the fall regarding increasing the standard of safety. Is that sort of what it is? Getting a report from. Can you read,
Sure.
can you read the motion that you have there, so we're all on the same page, please?
So that the second part is that, that council directs staff to report back on enhancing beyond the standard, the audible crossings on A and B category crosswalks by September.
Any questions regarding the proposed motion? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. First, a question for the Director of Infrastructure and Development. I tried my best to read the London Facility Accessibility Design Standards. It is correct that there are no standards in the London FADs with respect to audible components of crosswalks. Is that correct?
So through you, Mayor Craig, I'd have to take a look at the London standards to confirm that. But what I can tell you in terms of Book 15 and provincial design type standards and guidelines is that certain types of PXOs do not require, the extent of adding audible systems to them.
Okay. So then I follow up. It's more of a comment. There's a joke in my house when it comes to home improvement projects that for Mike, no project is more interesting than the next one. And the moral of the story is I have a tendency to start things, they get a little boring, and then rather than not do that, I want to go embark on something new. And I think the Parks and Recreation study that came to us last week identified that the municipalities not immune to that sort of phenomenon as well, where it advised us it would be best to take care of what we have before we embark on something new. I'm fully behind improving accessibility in the municipality. I have a daughter who's partially blind, another is because severe to moderate hearing impairments. I would really like to see us focus our attention through the Accessibility Advisory Committee on ensuring that we get all of our facilities up to the standards of the AODA and the London FADs before we embark on creating our own new Uber standard.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just curious if, based on what our director has said about what he thinks the report might say, if Councillor Blackwell might want to, or I guess we'd have to change it now, but basically, is it worth the time and money it'll cost for staff to do this report when we think staff might actually already know and have answers, and we could have just individual conversations and maybe come back at another time with a more focused motion? Just a thought to everyone.
Well, basically speaking, council has passed an amended motion, an amendment that says we want staff to bring back the report. So the only way that we don't give staff to bring back the report is to defeat the motion. If you didn't want the report, then you should have voted against the motion or the amendment. That's where that would have started. So anyway, Councillor Stewart, please.
I was one of those councillors through you that voted against it because I just saw things that weren't going to go well. These audio things are great, but we live in a climate that's 6 months snow. So we get an audio at a traffic light and saying it's okay to pass. The roads are slippery. The snow hasn't been removed perfectly. There's a lot of problems when you look in this, and I'm hoping that if you guys decide, the council decides to go with the report, those safety features will come into play. Because, a person with limited sight doesn't really understand the road conditions as people are sliding through a sidewalk that he or she just heard an audio say, oh, it's fine, cross. So there's lots of considerations just other than, it's a nice thing to do. we really have to look at the total safety, and I'll be not supporting this at all. Thank you.
To the director, please. With the amended motion that's presented here this evening, the best practices for accessible design per your report, how is that going to be implemented? Would that have been done, like that was just the upgrading or bringing up to standard all those crosswalks?
So through you, Mayor Craig, if I take a look at the list under the background section of the report, and really identify the three different categories in there being school crossings, traffic lights, and then PXOs. Our traffic lights are all up to AOTA standards. They have not only the tactile plates at the surface level, they have the audible devices as well. Our school crossings are essentially, very similar to what I would refer to as a type D type crossing. So you've got signage and painting. So you don't have triggers there that, that you would be utilizing push buttons to access any type of lighting. And then at your PXOs, you've got a variation of PXOs that have your lighting with your push buttons. So they've got their activated flashers where you could add your audible systems.
So if I may, what I'm asking is, how does the report delay any of the proposed actions for any of the work that would come out of this motion?
Fair. So the report really doesn't delay anything. We don't have budget to make any of these amendments. So unless council wants to say, hey, here's 135 grand to make upgrades at every single site to meet the ultimate standard of what you would define as desired accessibility, we don't have to do anything because we can't.
So we're approving the best practices, but it doesn't mean we're going to spend any money or do any work.
Correct.
Okay.
And
Well,
with the
that's
best,
all.
yeah, and with the best practices, a type D with no push buttons and no
Yeah.
flashers is still part of the best practices.
Okay.
So.
Any other, so the motion stands that we approve the continued use of best practices, and we're expecting a report in the fall, September, regarding the amendment that the clerk read out. Is there any more discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? And that was carried. Mystic Cove Gate follow-up. We need a mover and seconder that council receive report operations 2024-08 for information purposes. Moved by councillors Stewart and Steinoff Gray. Director, do you want to comment on this, please, before any questions?
Thanks, and through you, Mayor Craig. So the purpose of this report is essentially, if I refer to it as closing the loop, we made some changes in terms of how we approach the gate with policy amendments and not continuing forward with agreements with the county in relation to maintenance of the B line or Bruce Road 23. Through that, we made commitments to the community and to council through our engagement that we would collect usage data to understand the behaviors of motorists. So within that, our conclusion is that, under the significant volumes of traffic that were, collected in terms of speed of use, the average speed is within, what we would deem as safe based on what posted speed limits are in the area. Feedback from stakeholders as well as residents, generally speaking, was positive. One thing that I will add and share to this that really developed after the report was put together is that we did have a weather event later March. And if there was any, criticism or feedback from the community, it's that our policy essentially has us close the gate at the start of March or the end of February rather. And, people would have preferred to see the gate open and available during those weather events.
Questions for the director? Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
Thank you. I actually think that given the amount of concern that had been expressed by the community, that this is a really good news story, that for the most part, we did a pretty good job of respecting the folks that live on that street and having a safer passage back and forth when required based on adverse weather. I do think it's something we should explore, potentially increasing the duration just to catch those last minute storms that I think hit almost every single year. So maybe just going to some mark point in March. The one thing I was gonna say though, is that maximum speed on Victoria Street of 90. I found that really alarming, given the lack of visibility because of all the trees in the corners and the number of kids on the road and the bus stops that are on that particular street. I'm not sure what time that speed was recorded at, if you have that in your records, but I just found that disconcerting. I don't know how we slow down somebody who's doing 90 kilometers on a road that has an average speed of 23.
Unfortunately, I think if you put out the monitors, you'd find that on Huron Terrace too. Not that I agree with it. I'm not trying to justify it. I agree fully with you, but on this other side, we have Councillor Hinchberger and Stewart, and I think Councillor Blackwell, did you have your hand up too? Okay. Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm going to second what Councillor Steinhoff Gray said about the period between March 1st and say March 31st. And I appreciate that the report said that the bylaw gives you some discretionary ability to open the gate. But I have some concerns that on a case-by-case basis, we could run into a challenge in communicating that to people. But that's something that I'm going to take offline with some of my colleagues and discuss how we might move forward there. But otherwise, I agree with Councillor Steinhoff Gray. I think that this is an example of where we stuck our neck out there. It wasn't a popular decision by some, but I think that the data actually supports that it was a good decision. Thanks.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, yeah, it's a good report. I actually live down there, so I experienced on a day-to-day. It was very useful. Yes, there is a few speeders. You know, we'll make sure that the OPP gets out there a little more and make sure they slow down. I would like to make a friendly amendment if I want to change the date, or it is an amendment. I'd like to change the date. There was a couple incidents in March that I experienced both of them. Unfortunately, I was in Kincardine. Kincardine was sunny, went back to Tiverton, and it was a blizzard whiteout. And it was truly amazing how that whole area, for twice in March, that all of a sudden it was just, I was sort of white knuckled on my car, and I was going, wow, I wish the gate was open. So my amendment would be for next year, 24-25, that we leave the gate open until March 31st, 24.
Seconder for that amendment, Councillor Prenger. Director, any comment? Do you need any consideration time for this, or do you see any reason just for bring that back in a couple of weeks or just for consideration? What is your thought on that?
So through you, Mayor Craig, that certainly would be supported at the staffing level. I think it would be a simple amendment to the existing bylaw to change the dates within that.
Further questions? Councillor Stewart?
And through you, Mayor, my phone number is this, because I live down there and I'll probably be hearing a lot of people. So to have an amendment from a local Ward 2 councillor, I'll have to take the heat, but thank you very much. And I'm hoping we're going to get a positive result here. Thank you.
Councillor Prenger?
Sorry, we're still on the amendment, aren't we? Or deciding on it?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I will wait until after we've voted on the amendment to ask another question, please.
So the difference between with just the date. Yeah, it's just a date that we're discussing. Okay. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, now the motion itself. And the motion is that we receive it for information and that we leave the gate open until March 31st. So it's like, so that's all we're doing is receiving it as information. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Probably towards our director. The report says that the concern about the speeding was related to the OPP for enforcement support. I was just wondering what kind of feedback you got from them, if any promises on what that support might be.
So anytime that we do collect, traffic behavior type data, we do share that with the local OPP branch out of Kincardine. That is shared amongst their officers, and then, through their internal processes, they'll consider whether they do change, how they respond and report to areas. But other than that, there's no formal commitment that, they're gonna be out there, 2 times a week instead of 1 type things.
Counselor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I can add a little bit of extra information sort of on how that process works. Is when the data is collected, it doesn't just go to our local branch, but it goes right into OPP West, and like the entire hierarchy has a bunch of statistical analysis that come through and take a look at all the data. Unfortunately, on a road like this, where you have one driver doing a peak of 90, it might appear as a blip or an outlier, as horrendous as it seems. But once the data is analyzed and it comes back, if there's a determined area, we've had several in our municipality, even in our time in council, there was an issue out towards Armo, and there's another issue in front of KTT. And that leads to a focus patrol where the inspector can direct certain more frequent and more visible officers conducting speed enforcement to try and slow down and deter people as well. So it's a very scientific process that flows all the way through from our staff collecting the data to it gets handled on the back end by the OPP.
So the motion is we receive it for information, and the gate stays open till the end of March. All in favor? That's carried. Updated flag protocol policy. Need a mover and seconder that council approve in addition to policy GG 1.3 flag protocol to permit the Kincardine Lions Club to raise and fly the Lions Club flag in addition to the currently permitted flags of the municipal, provincial, and or Canadian flag on the 2 flag staffs located at the Kincardine splash pad for an unspecified amount of time at their discretion, and the council direct staff to update the flag protocol policy GG 1.13 under the new policy format and numbering system. Moved by councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Hinchberger. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. 3, ad hoc committee recommendations, policy and private tree bylaw. Need a mover and seconder. The council direct staff to prepare a bylaw to adopt the draft tree canopy and natural vegetation policy as recommended by the ad hoc committee on the May 8th, 2024 agenda. Moved by councillors Hinchberger and Prenger. Any discussion? Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. As chair of the committee, on behalf of myself and my fellow councillors on the committee, Councillor Prenger and Councillor Blackwell, I'd like to thank the municipal staff, particularly the CAO, who I'm pretty sure during it put a lot of work in at a detailed level that wouldn't normally fall under the job description of a CAO. Appreciate that. County staff, in particular Claire Dodds, who came and spoke with us and helped us to lay out the Planning Act perspectives of this, the Municipal Act, and how the two mesh with each other. The previous council and the work that their Environment Committee did in the previous term that resulted in a draft bylaw that we used as a starting point to help us. And last but not least, the various community interest groups and their passionate representatives of the environment, some are who are in the gallery tonight. I'll just lay out a couple. The report written by CAO is extremely well written, in my opinion, and is a very good read for those who are interested in the details. So although we started with the previous term's draft bylaw, I think a lot of it had to do with none of the members of the committee were present in its development, and we tried to work with it for a while and struggled. So we decided to take more of an approach where we went from scratch. And we started with the requirement under the Municipal Act that we actually have a meaningful natural vegetation policy, one that just allowed us to check off a box in the eyes of the province. And we went from there. And this idea about having a bylaw that regulates native trees on private property kind of fell out of the fact that we started initially and looked at a policy about natural vegetation. So it seemed, among other things, that we should focus on native trees. Between the policy and the bylaw, the committee we spent quite a bit of time discussing and seeking to find that nice balance between what we called the carrot versus the stick in order to achieve the policy objects regarding preserving and enhancing our tree canopy. A few of the principles that we use is that we felt that the bylaws should apply to everybody in general, and there shouldn't be any particular focus on any particular groups. First order of the business was to regulate larger, heavily treated properties that are candidates for development under the Planning Act until applications could be submitted and the requirements of the Planning Act could take effect. So we essentially threw a blanket over the entire municipality. And then in general terms, what we did then was we decided to open up the blanket with some holes for some smaller size properties of the type that, you or I may own, and gave a little latitude for that. You have to read it in its entirety to determine, and ultimately there's going to be some sort of flow chart that would be produced to explain it to easily understandable terms. But there are a number of exemptions that exist in the bylaw, despite what I just read. Some of them are mandatory on the Municipal Act, and others are ones that help support some of the other priorities of this government and frankly all governments in Ontario, such as housing. Lastly, I'll say that by no means do I consider to be the end of our journey on this front. The place I used to work used to always look at revision 0 procedures and say, not for long. But I believe this is a good starting point in our journey towards growing environmental stewardship in the municipality. And it provides a balance between the benefits realized when individuals exercise their individual rights and their own properties and government's responsibility to ensure long-term sustainability. So I'm willing to entertain any questions.
Councillor Prengert, any comments? We do appreciate the work that you and Councillor Hinchberger and Blackwell put into it. So if you want to offer a comment, floor is yours, and I'll go to Councillor Blackwell after.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I like what Councillor Hinchberger said, that it's a great starting point for developing and fostering environmental stewardship in our community. We're not trying to inhibit development. We're not trying to inhibit people's enjoyment of their own properties. I mean, I think most of us here are property owners and we don't want to be, too restricted. So we took all of that into consideration and tried to come up with a bylaw that supported our community's needs both privately and environmentally. And I think we, like Councillor Hinchberger said, we have a great starting point here and we can build off of that. We can see how it goes for a little while, and there might be hiccups, but we can always make amendments and make it better. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell?
Thank you. Through you, I would like to echo the comments made by my committee members, as well as thank the CAO and staff for guiding us through what was sometimes a very convoluted process. I think one of the things was policy is really hard where you know where you want to get, but you don't necessarily know how to get there. It's walking through some really tall weeds and trying to figure out what you can and can't do. There was a comment made before kind of about like, as soon as you think you know a little bit about policy or philosophy or politics, it's a fallacy because you have no idea what you don't know. And that was a big part of this process for us, was actually understanding how we were limited, what we could achieve, and then what we really wanted to achieve. I think this motion specifically is related to the tree policy, or the natural vegetation policy, which I think in those conversations goes far just beyond trees. It talks a lot about the municipal responsibility around a variety of vegetation. And I think as a council that has discussed environmental stewardship, it is something that I think covers a really broad range of things to help us work towards some sustainable practices.
Okay, so
Oh,
I appreciate the comments. Are there any questions regarding this? Our one member has been called into work, so I was just trying to accommodate her schedule, but okay. Counselor Stewart, please. Oh, just a minute. Counselor Blackwell, were you done?
I had lost a train of thought, but I won't be able to find it again. So yes, I'll be done. Thank you.
Counselor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, of course, Mayor. I want to understand, tonight, we're just approving to move ahead with a draft bylaw. Is that what this motion is? Because what I would recommend, I have a few little things in there about, certain policies about 2-for-1. We used to have it for live trees. We did that. Now we're going to think of considering for dead trees. And being on the Saugeen Valley Board, we have to remove a bunch of trees over at Stony Island, which turns out to be 7,000. So we'd have to add another 14,000 trees. And these are the kind of things that I think we could handle, maybe not tonight, but I forgot lawyers use it all the time where they have a draft and then you can write down in red alongside some of your viewpoints. What is it called? No, I'd recommend that instead of going through some of this stuff, because overall, I like to know sort of the cost too, an estimated cost, because some of these bylaws that we put in policies can have some significant cost. I see in the group that I noticed Doug and his team are here, and Doug and his team have been very successful in getting a lot of public donations and private donations and grants and everything. I believe you're up around $50,000 or so for trees. I would also like to include those trees in sort of our policy too, so it becomes a real community. So, I guess one of the things is that I probably haven't gone through enough of it to really make a fair assessment, but if we could actually do that, bring it forward again, it'd be very close to a final accomplishment. Sorry. Thank you.
Counselor Hinchberger, please. Do you see a
Path forward?
a path through the forest here?
Well, from my perspective, because we'd never had a tree policy before or a tree bylaw, and knowing the magnitude of it and the detail of it, there had to be an introduction, not simply put it on the agenda and you were going to make a decision on a given night. So that was the intent tonight, was to introduce it to council. And the May 7th, as opposed to say the next meeting on April the 24th, was designed to allow that opportunity for, say, those other than the team that was involved in drafting it, who's mulled it over for months, to have a chance to read it again, read it a third time, reach out to committee members individually, go over some of the questions. One thing I would point out, the policy does, I'm going on memory here, but I'm pretty sure it does also credit and take into account the work that community groups may be actually helping us do to achieve our overall targets. But we can work that, and any member of the committee individually is available offline between now and May to go over any questions or concerns that any other member of council might have.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. It's more of a comment. The tree bylaw is comprehensive, and I really just want to express my thanks for the amount of work and time that's gone in. I know that when we started on this council, it was one of the things that was kind of overhanging from the last council period. And it has undoubtedly been a piece of labor that has really gone into it, and you've worked collaboratively and collectively, not only amongst yourselves, but with the community groups to produce something. So it really is just a job well done, and thanks very much for your efforts on this.
Counselor Kavanaugh, please.
Through the chair, I'd like to echo those thanks to those committee members that put that extra time in. You definitely planted some good roots here that I hope we can grow. And we're going to branch out, and I will be supporting this tonight, and I will be supporting it on May 8th as well, because there is no other planet. We only have one, and we have to take care of it. Thank you.
So if I may, we're looking at a month to go until we bring the draft bylaw forward. And if I might be so bold, I would offer that in the next 2 weeks, if any council members have any suggested amendments to it, that they submit them to our CAO. The CAO, in collaboration with the tree ad hoc committee, review those, make any, like, there are gonna be some suggestions that I make that they're gonna say ain't happening, and that's, and that's okay. No, well, no, I think, it comes forward. You, the committee is being asked to bring the recommendations, and I'm gonna respect your recommendations, because from what I saw in the tree bylaw, it was, appropriate, as Councillor Prenger said, it, covered the bases, but it wasn't so restrictive that you couldn't go out in your own backyard and enjoy your trees, whether they were there or not there for many. But I'm saying, submit the comments within the next 2 weeks. If you're able to collaborate with the tree committee to condense them and incorporate them or not. And on the 8th of May, we have a draft bylaw that's here to vote on. Councillor Stewart, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, just one more thing. I don't know how difficult it is to do what my fellow councillor is talking about, where you have the draft bylaw and then you can make comments on the side. Is that a hard process? That's really easy, and then everyone gets to see it and everything. It's easier for everybody, or is it? Yeah, you're asking a non-technical person to do it. So, okay, anyone who'd like to help Councillor Stewart, I'd take him, but if you could set that up, I would appreciate it, Mike. Thanks.
So the motion that we have here, by and large, is still in effect, so that it will come forward on the 8th of May, following input from the rest of the council members. And we can have a bylaw to adopt the draft tree canopy and natural vegetation policy. So it seems to me that the motion as presented is the one that advances our discussion and allows for continued conversation and amendment until the 8th of May. All in favor? That's carried. We need a mover and seconder that council direct staff to place a draft bylaw to regulate native trees on private property on the May 8th, 2024 agenda, moved by Councillors Blackwell and Kavanaugh. And unless I miss my guess, we'll have the same process for that as we did the previous bylaw. All in favor? That's carried. Holding removal bylaw 554 Huron Terrace Development Services. We need a mover and seconder. The council, the municipality of Kincardine pass a bylaw for the removal of the holding H1 provision from TPS Part Lot 21 North, Part Lot 22 Huron Terrace, West Side Municipality of Kincardine, Geographic Town of Kincardine. Moved by councillors Inchberg and Inchberger and Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 7.2, consideration of bylaws, 2024 taxation bylaw. Need a mover and seconder that the 2024 taxation bylaw be deemed to be read first, second, third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-053, moved by councillors Inchberger and Blackwell. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Motion to pass bylaws. We need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, third time. Finally passed this 10th day of April 2024. Award the relining water main on Highland Drive. Award the Kincardine Tiverton Water Tower tender. Award the hot mix tender. Award the tandem plow truck contract. Flag protocol policy. An amendment to zoning bylaw 2023-25 holding removal. Moved by councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Hinchberger. Any discussion? Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment that, we're at the very beginning of Q2 and staff has brought forward several tenders for us to look at, not just today, but at previous meetings. And you can just see how much effort and work they've got done already in Q1, and thank them for that.
All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Moving on to the consent agenda. Once again, items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine. And they're enacted in one motion unless you'd like to withdraw one for conversation either this evening or at a future date. Items for comment, Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Through you, Mayor. Couple quick questions on a couple of them. 8.1 A, B, the infrastructure and development first quarter report. Director, I happen to notice that we're starting to see detour signs showing up around Queen Street, et cetera, related to the Mount Forest Avenue project. I don't think it's covered in the report because it's new. Do we have on the spirit of communication, we got a general start date for when that detour is going to take place?
Through you, Mayor Craig, I actually had asked Jill to provide an update this evening, but in interest of the question, the plan for the Mount Forest reconstruction will see traffic impacts next week and the following week on Queen Street. So next week, what you'll see is a traffic arrangement where we're going to have flag people there. So there will be a reduction to one lane, and that's for the purposes of storm sewer installation on the east side of that area. And then the following week, we will be closing the intersection completely for the installation of the sanitary maintenance hole and then the sanitary pipe to work easterly up Mount Forest. And then following that, the intersection and area will function. So during the time of the 5-day closure, there is a detour that is, I assume signage is laying out there now, but will be posted. And the use of Highway 21 and Concession 5 will be required to access anything north of Mount Forest Ave, so Westridge on the Lake, Seashore or Huron Ridge subdivision areas. And then we've also been in communication with the hospital, the Women's House, the pharmacy, all of the stakeholders in the area to advise, this is what the plan is in terms of the defined dates. We had shared with that group in a pre-construction meeting as well what things were going to look like. And then over the course of this week, we'll see Omega, the constructor, work on the temporary access roads and stuff like that that will allow us to maintain access in and out of the hospital area.
Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, please. Microphone, please, Councillor. Yep.
It's very interesting, and through you, Mayor, there's been a lot of people very sensitive to our rock garden down there. And I've been trying to answer a few of their questions because I know a little bit about it. And I know that you proceeded and everything else. There was a couple of questions I couldn't answer. A few people were planning to have their weddings down there in June and July and August, and it's a big area. When did we anticipate? I thought it was sort of a 2-month project, but maybe you can help. And maybe what you could do, I know you never know when this stuff is going to all of a sudden hit the airways. Maybe you can get Lori to send out a little note on our website just talking about that particular project, because the rock garden is very sensitive to a lot of people. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Craig. So that project has started as of Monday this week. So we have the reservoir stripped. We'd like to thank the local community down there, as it was a little bit dusty at times as well. But the objective at this point, weather permitting, is that we will be starting to work at waterproofing that reservoir as early as next week. We project that it would probably be a 6 or 7 day project to get the reservoir completed, and then we will begin restoration work right away. The community service group worked with us to block off that we have that. There's no bookings down there till May 31st. We will do our absolute best to restore the rock garden. We've reached out to a few local community groups and want to restore it to whatever the wishes of the community would be down there to improve or put back the existing.
Excellent, Mark. Excellent.
Anything else from the consent agenda? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to pull out, just for a very quick discussion, 8.1 A-C, which is the Spring Clean Week It will be starting just prior to our next council meeting, going off on our earlier conversation on environmental stuff. I'm really excited to get out there with my son and get the town looking great. We're getting some nice weather, so it's making me itchy to get down to the beach and the trails and the parks, and anything we can do to come together and help our community look great is something we can take pride in.
All right, we need a mover and seconder. The council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated April 10, 2024. Direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Moved by councilors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. All in favor? That's carried. Members of council, general announcements. Councillor Hinchberger.
I have none tonight, Your Honor.
Honor. Thank you. Councillor Pranger, please.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
I'm not quite sure because I wasn't on my phone because I was here in council, but I'm dying to hear whether Catch the Ace was a winner tonight or it's going to go, because next week, if it wasn't picked out, it could be $100,000 for the community. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. 3 seems to be my lucky number. I've got 3 announcements again tonight. The first is I'd like to send a big congratulations out to the Knox Presbyterian Church of Kincardine. They're celebrating 175 years this year, which is a pretty fantastic milestone. I'd also like to remind folks about the upcoming Hike for Hospice. You can find out more information on the Huron Shores Hospice website to register for that event. And, oh, I had one more. Well, it's gone. Thanks very much.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
I'm sure Councillor Blackwell will think of it in a second. In the meantime, I'd like to congratulate all of the grade 4 to 6 students that participated in the Blue Water Regional Science and Technology Fair. They traveled to Owen Sound today to compete in their own little science fair, which is quite impressive. Remind everyone that April 22nd is Earth Day. So please do your part. And the last thing is that Rock with Your Docs tickets are on sale. It's for June 1st and it will be at the Davidson Center. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, please.
I have no announcements.
Just one reminder that the Lions flag raising is Friday, 12 p.m. at the Davidson Center Park. And amongst other things, Kincardine is the beneficiary of significant volunteer efforts. We are blessed with a number of volunteers in our community. And National Volunteer Week is April 14 to 20. So if you know a volunteer, pat them on the back. And if you are a volunteer, accept this pat on your back from me. So thank you very much. CAO, please.
Director Weiser, he provided the update that I was going to give, so I have no other updates.
All right, we need a mover and seconder that the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine for the meeting April 10, 2024 be deemed to be read first, second, third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-060. Moved by Councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Blackwell. All in favor? That's carried. And we need a mover and seconder that we adjourn at 6:33, moved by Councillor Hinchberger and Stewart. All in favor?